Yeah, thank you.
Done, yes. Those clubs outside of Jamaica that would like to bring greetings at this time. Inside those clubs in Jamaica, now we start with Division 25. 25.
Good evening, President Paul. This is DLG Joe from the Kiwanis Club of Hopewell.
All right.
Bringing you warm greetings and wish for you a very successful and enjoyable meeting, at least for all of us.
Right.
There are two of us on so far, IPP, Nadine, and myself. Have a happy meeting.
Okay, welcome and thank you for coming. Any other clubs from Division
You're welcome.
25? Division 24? 24? If not, we'll go to 23 East. Those clubs in 23 East that would like to bring greetings at this time.
IPD Junior.
Yes, good evening.
This is DLG Bobby Winter from the Kiwanis Club of Ligani. Good to be here this evening.
And thank you for coming. How are you, Bobby? A long time I haven't seen you.
Yes, it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Been a while. I keep helping. Yes, good to see you. And the team from Kingston.
Good to see you as well. Division 23 East. 23 East. If not, we go to 23 West. And the clubs are from Division 23 West that would like to bring greetings at this time. If not, we move to our own Division 23 Central. Those clubs in 23 Central that would like to bring greetings at this time.
Well, PD, I'm back on again, this time representing the Kiwanis Club of St. Thomas. Good to be here again, sir. Thank you.
Nobody will come forward, so you do. Thank you, DLG.
Yeah.
23 Central.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, very good evening.
President-elect Joan here. I have a little connection issue, so if I am cut out, please forgive me. Just bringing greetings, excited to be here and looking forward to the discussion. I am alone at the moment, but I do anticipate my team members joining me soon.
I hope they join you soon, but you are not alone here with us so far until they.
Yes, awesome.
Well, Division 23 Central. If not, we move to our SLP. Are there any SLP members online now that would like to bring greetings at this time? Or SLP? Any online that would like to bring greetings at this point? Any other Kiwanians online that would like to bring greetings at this time?
I was having some internet issues. This is Kevin
Okay,
Williams
go ahead,
from
please
the
go ahead. Please go ahead.
Kiwanis Club of Papina at UTEC. And my
Okay,
colleague will be presenting tonight, Dr. Paul Ivey. So I'm here to support him as well.
okay, good.
Edie Junior, I just want to say hello to President Paul and the members of Kingston Club. It has been a while since I've been able to join you. And so I'm happy to be here tonight.
Yes. And we are certainly happy to have you tonight as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you very much, LG.
Yes.
I praise.
Thank you for coming.
Welcome.
And PD Junior, let's welcome F.A. Alice Douglas from Dunoon Park Technical High School.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Any other non-Kiwanian, anybody else that would like to bring greeting at this point?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rona May. This is my first time at a Kiwanis meeting. I am
Good. Welcome.
excited to join. I want to be a part of this organization, so I'm hoping to learn more as I progress. I'm in the Papine area, so I just heard a gentleman saying he's from Papine and UTech, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. We sure hope that you'll enjoy it, and you will, in a very short while from now, you'll be a full-fledged Kiwanian in one of our clubs.
Thank you.
Good.
Greetings to all the Kiwanians on the call, and I want to thank Kiwanian Desmond Batchelor for inviting me, and for the president to saying yes, it's okay for me to participate this evening. I was there at the last meeting, and I'm looking forward to this evening's conversation with your distinguished guests.
Yes. We
Thanks
all
for
are
having
looking
me.
forward to that conversation this evening. So I don't want to take up any more of your time. If there are anybody else that would like to bring greetings, you could do so very quickly. If not, I'll hand over the baton back to President Paul. Take over, President Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, President Designate Junior, for doing the welcome. And I want to extend a special welcome to all those guests that are here with us this evening to support our distinguished guest speaker. We're very happy to have you as well. So let us move on to apologies for absence. I haven't received any apologies. Secretary DLG Willie, did you get any at this time?
Yes, I just received an apology from Treasurer Harvey Lewis.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Yes, thank you very much for that, DLG Willie. We'll move on to the recognition of birthdays and anniversaries, and I'm going to call on President-elect Designate Newton to do so. PED Newton.
Thank you, President Paul. Good evening, everyone. Well, everybody seemed to be waiting on Dr. Ivey to tell us about our recent past and our future to come. So for special birthdays and anniversaries, for this week, we have just one, and that's past Chairman George Gillen and Cynthia. They celebrate their wedding anniversary on the 15th of this month. So if there's anyone on the platform right now celebrating any special occasion through President Paul, I'm asking you to just open your microphone and let us know so we can celebrate with you. Anyone? Okay, in that case, it's back to you, President Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much, PED Newton. We'll move on to the Kiwanis education segment, and I'll call on LGED Desmond to lead us in that segment.
Thank you, President Paul. Good evening, everyone. The topic is membership approval for projects beyond 1 year for completion. And the source is Kiwanis International Procedures. The current club board of directors cannot bind future boards. If a club wishes to undertake any project that cannot be completed within 1 administrative year, the club membership must vote in the affirmative for this approval. And this approval commits the entire club. This decision binds succeeding boards of directors to continue with the project until completion or until the club membership reverses its original decision. Revocation or amendment of board decisions may be effected through a majority vote or 2/3 vote of the membership, depending on the circumstances, provided a quorum is present. In the case of recurring projects, which would normally end September 30, for example, essay writing, I'm trying to center, yes, essay writing competition, speech, spelling competition, or the Terrific Kids program. They may be repeated with the approval of the new board for the new administrative year without the approval of the membership. That's it for Kiwanis education. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much, LGE Desmond, for bringing us up to date with this education segment. We'll move on to the main feature for our meeting this evening. But before I do so, I'm going to call on Past District Trustee Ralston to introduce our special guest. PDT Ralston.
Thank you, President Paul. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing it clearly.
Okay, thank you. I just listened to Kiwanis education, and it reiterates why this is a member-led organization. President Paul, fellow Kiwanians and guests, just in your celebration were great. You know, we had so much to celebrate, sports and all of that over the past couple of weeks. But tonight, mine is an honor to introduce Dr. Paul Ivey, who was born after Jamaica attained political independence. We shouldn't really divulge in much. And we also look forward to the difference between political independence and real independence. But he holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, a master's and a PhD degree in entomology and environmental planning and management from the Louisiana State University, LSU, in the USA. He also has a master's degree in adult education and lifelong learning from Mount St. Vincent University in Canada. Dr. Ivey has been an educator, higher education administrator, and applied scientist at the secondary, college, and university levels for over 30 years. At present, he is an associate professor and associate vice president at the University of Technology, Jamaica, UTech. He has also been interested in national affairs from his teenager years. But it was while pursuing his second master's degree at Mount St. Vincent University that the spark to become an active citizen was lit from his participation in a summer institute on active citizenship. Now, Dr. Ivey thinks Jamaican citizens must act within their domain of competence and influence. In other words, use what is in their hand to catalyze the change they want to see in Jamaica. And in this regard, as an adult educator turned griot, which is an African tribal storyteller who preserves genealogies, he has written 14 books so far, including Jamaica, Paradise and Paradox, Active Citizenship Overcoming Political Apathy in Jamaica, Fostering a Culture of Lawfulness, Fixing Jamaica's Normalized Abnormalities. One book, Liquor But Tallow, deal with cultural superpowers and other successes. And then this one I find very interesting, The Compelling Case for Reparation for Chattel Slavery. And another of his interesting books is Toxic Masculinity, which is a disorder models of manhood in Jamaica. Concerning commentary on public affairs, he has also appeared several times on programs such as Running African on Ivey FM, and has twice delivered a Thursday editorial on CBM TV. And is also active on social media. He regards the late Martin Henry as a role model and mentor. And that person motivated him in his writings and coming out to tell it as it is, public affairs commentator. He will tell you what school he went to in terms of secondary education. And he'll also tell you if he's a country boy or a Kingstonian. But it's my pleasure, President Paul and fellow Kiwanians, to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Dr. Paul Ivey.
Dr. Ivey, you have co-hosting privileges if you are going to use any videos when your aides.
Okay, yes, but I won't.
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Nunes, for your comprehensive introduction that, in a sense, reading out all my accomplishments and so on kind of sets me up to deliver to expectations, but I will do my best. So President Paul Peart, my namesake, executive members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston and other members, and Mr. Stuart Spencer, the chair of your meetings committee, other members who are joining from overseas, members of the Key and Circle K clubs, if present. Good evening all. I'm happy for the opportunity to make this presentation to your distinguished membership. I've noted in some of the background information provided to me that this club was formed in 1964. That is just, of course, 2 years on after Jamaica gained independence. And at that time, I think I might have been in diapers. This presentation today is one which affords me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts as someone who has been born after Jamaica gained independence. I wasn't around for the initial festivities. I came along shortly thereafter, or sometime thereafter, shall we say. And so I've lived all my life in Jamaica, except for short periods of time studying overseas at those various universities that have been mentioned. And I do not have a disposition or a psychological feeling of comfort living anywhere else except in Jamaica. I'm from St. Catherine, the Yorton area. That's where I was born. And I actually went to Mount Rosser Primary School up the hill from Yorton. So in looking at the topic today, Jamaica after 60 years, how have we handled our affairs? So as a post-independence born person, living here for all my life essentially, and looking at the arc of Jamaica since 1962 to the present, where this weekend past, we celebrated 60 years as an independent country. Your members, Robert Winter and Stuart Spencer, are instrumental in my being here this evening. So they hold responsibility if I say anything controversial. So I want to make that disclaimer and put responsibility in that quarter at the onset. The thing is, the genius of democracy is that every citizen or any citizen has the opportunity to participate in the affairs of their country. And in my case, as was mentioned, from my teenage years, I've always been interested in general knowledge, national affairs, listen to the news, what's happening, who says what. I recall in my teenage years, for example, a very popular, charismatic, and some would say articulate and politician, tremendous oratorical prowess, when he was making his presentations in the parliament, I would listen to them and I would repeat them in my house. Mr. Speaker, so and so and so and so, and fundamentally, and so and so. Much to the enjoyment of my mother, listening to me repeating and parroting this particular politician. I was just interested in national affairs and the going-ons. And as was mentioned, when I took this second master's degree, this MEd at Mount St. Vincent University, one of the exercises or part of the curriculum was the Summer Institute in Prince Edward Island. And we went there and we had this engagement. And it sparked in me where there were particular individuals who were brought in from the community to share with us what experiences they had and situations that motivated them to get off their laurels and seek to become change agents to change the situations in their space that required changing. So a spark was lit. It is also the case that I worked alongside Martin Henry, the late Martin Henry, for 9 years at University of Technology, Jamaica. He was my colleague. Our offices were separated by just one door. And Martin and I, we talked all the time about national matters. We often discussed the subjects of his columns. He wrote for 30 years for the Gleaner and so on. And I would say to him, Martin, how it is that you are persisting in writing for 30 years? And there are so many things repeating in terms of recurring. And he said to me that that's all right. When one is breaking rocks, it's not the last blow that shatters the rocks, but it is the cumulative effects of all the blows that have been inflicted on the rocks. And so I regard Martin as, and also in terms of his marshalling of evidence, his clarity of thought, the logic that he brought to his columns, and his even-handedness. He made the facts, took him to the conclusions that were to be drawn, and he called a spade a spade. So I was impressed and inspired by Martin Henry. I want also to say that I have no personal political aspirations. My motivation for coming out is to see a better Jamaica. That's my motivation. A Jamaica that achieves the goals of Vision 2030. And I will say more about this later. So in terms of my presentation this evening, I will take an academic and an accountant's approach to address the topic. By this, I mean, I will be relying on evidence from credible sources to support the points that I will make. And I will also be presenting information. This is where the accountant's part come in now. Two sides of the ledger, so to speak, or if it is a balance sheet or I don't know much about accounting, or it's a cash book. But the point I'm making is that there will be two sides of the equation presented about Jamaica after 60 years, our successes and our failures. And I will just cite some examples of the both categories after our 6 decades of independence. I will start with some general remarks and then segue into citing the specific examples of successes and failures. So then, what's my thesis? I am positing that as we celebrate 60 years of self-rule this year, we must pause for serious introspection on how we have performed being in charge of our own affairs. So in other words, marking this milestone can't be and ought not to be just ending with the big party that we had over the weekend at the National Stadium, the Grand Gala. It was a nice show, very glitzy, well produced, and all of that. But we need to go beyond the festivities, I am arguing. And so, just to take us back a little bit from the historical archives, when Jamaica gained political independence on August 6, 1962, it marked the end of centuries of British colonial rule that included chattel enslavement of our proximate African ancestors, who were brought here in chains and subjected to indescribable dehumanizing treatment that stripped them of their culture, their dignity, and their agency. Therefore, independence in 1962 was a big deal. It was an epochal event that spawned in the hearts, minds, and souls of the Jamaican people a pervasive sense of euphoria, excitement, enthusiasm, and hope, and the promise of a better future. This is how political historian, the late Troy Kane, captured the spirit and mood of the occasion. And I quote, "Independence celebrations and activities throughout the island lasted over a week and climaxed at midnight on August 6th at our brand new National Stadium. The Union Jack was lowered and our new national flag of black, green, and gold was proudly raised at the crescendo of cheers and fireworks. The national flag had been taken around the island by runners. For the magnificent occasion, it was as if everyone had forgotten the problems and the politics and embraced the moment in unity to truly become one people out of many." End of quote. So for Jamaica at the time, nationhood beckoned, and we were finally in charge of our own destiny. We moved from British colony to hopeful nation. Also, on the morning of August 7, the following day, at a ceremony in Gordon House, Norman Manley declared, and I quote, "We have come to independence prepared and ready to shoulder our new responsibilities and united, I believe, in a single hope that we will make our small country a safe and happy home for all our people." End of quote. So in a sense, so we see the euphoria and the hope in the hearts of Jamaicans coming from the Troy Kane quote. And we see in the Norman Manley quote that in a sense, making Jamaica a safe and happy home for all our people was the standard against which we would be judged in how we managed our affairs. So it was a critical metric by which our success would be measured. So then, 60 years on, we must ask ourselves two pertinent questions. How well has Jamaica managed its affairs after 6 decades of self-rule? More specifically, have we made Jamaica a safe, prosperous, and happy place for all? As an academic, I have to look at the evidence dispassionately. And one of the things that I undertook as a citizen interested in our democracy, as a post-independence born person, Jamaican, one of the things that I undertook as an academic was to look at the evidence. And I've taken the time and I deployed the scholarship of integration from multiple sources, and I curated all the information that I could find or what I availed myself of into my 3-volume book, Jamaica, Paradise, and Paradox. And it is basically a scan, if you will. If we're saying, looking at a kind of an MRI scan of Jamaica, I've looked at Jamaica and I've cataloged the information concerning how Jamaica has performed in many spheres of the society, many aspects of how a country operates, the security forces, the judiciary, the education system, the police, the level of social equity, social harmony, all of those kinds of issues, the economy, and so on and so forth. So basically, I have chronicled the challenges as I have seen them, and as other scholars and authorities have cataloged them also. I've pulled them into one space in these 3 volumes. And I've also included, so I didn't want this to be just a dreary dystopian tome listing all our challenges and all. I went further in that I also curated the prescriptions and the recommendations that have been made over the years to address all of these challenges that we have had. So we have had this situation. The question that arises also is that persons have argued, and I've heard it said, and the question has been put, is Jamaica a failed state? Some of us may recall that several years ago, a prominent banker made that assertion that Jamaica is a failed state. And he got that comment generated tremendous reactions and responses. That's an open question, which I may address later this afternoon. But just recently, it was mentioned in my intro that I am active in social media. So I pose particular questions to get the reactions and responses from my fellow Jamaicans. And recently, I asked a young Jamaican woman in her early 30s, a university graduate, whether she shared the view that has been expressed by some persons that Jamaica was a failed state. This was her answer. I will read it for you. She said, more than failed. I wish, she used the vernacular now. I wish I could have rescinded that vote and go back fully to the Queen, because it now work out for your soul down here. No accountability and people acting like taxpayers' money are for them. Plus this bag of family and friends in both parties. Such a what difference we go back to the Queen. At least the money would have better. I reckon she was talking about the exchange rate of the pound to what our dollar is now. So those are some of the things out there. In 2009, we kind of did a reset of Jamaica, and the Vision 2030 was articulated. So it was a kind of reset. And at that time, 4 goals were articulated. So we're coming from the Norman Manley aspiration of Jamaica being a safe and happy home for all. And we came along to 2009 and we promulgated Vision 2030. 4 goals, 4 key goals. The first one, Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential. The Jamaican society is secure, cohesive, and just. Jamaica's economy is prosperous. Jamaica, fourth goal, Jamaica has a healthy natural environment. One of the exercises that I suggest from time to time to persons with whom I interact, and I'm going to do that this evening as well, with respect to the 4 goals articulated in Vision 2030. Let's say we were to convert them into questions. So let's go. First question, Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential. When the performance of our education system is considered, are Jamaicans being empowered to achieve their fullest potential? Ponder that question as a derivative of goal 1. Second question, as a derivative of goal 2. Based on the available evidence, is the Jamaican society secure, cohesive, and just? Third question from goal number 3. Based on the available evidence and the daily struggle of many Jamaicans just to survive, is the Jamaican economy prosperous? Fourth question as a derivative of goal number 4 of Vision 2030. Jamaica has a healthy natural environment. Based on the many occasions, including the recent Rio Cobre spill from the bauxite company up in my hometown, based on the many occasions when environmental activists have had to bawl out, does Jamaica have a healthy natural environment? These are questions that we must ask and reflect on as we are 60 years on into our self-government. And so, what have been some of our successes? Because the thing is, it cannot be true based on the evidence that nothing are going. And I will answer the question as to my own perspective as to whether Jamaica is a failed state. So I will now cite some evidence of our successes. First up is that one of the successes of post-independence Jamaica is that we have a functioning democracy. Since universal adult suffrage in 1944, we have had, I think, 13 elections, and the results have been largely accepted by the electorate. In the 2016 election, I believe, going from memory to a great extent here, when there was that 1 seat difference between the two parties, and the democracy held. In fact, Jamaica, as Professor Orlando Pattison has declared, is that Jamaica is a strong and robust democracy, and it is not one of the things that is highlighted often about us in terms of one of our successes. In fact, the Gleaner, in an editorial, went as far as to suggest that the US can learn lessons from Jamaica as it relates to democracy, because we have not had what the US have had, that January 6, 2021 insurrection, where supporters of the losing presidential candidate stormed the US Capitol. We have not had that in Jamaica. So in terms of a success, we can put a tick beside us having a functioning democracy. So the point can be made though, that prior to the Electoral Commission of Jamaica being established, we had some issues. But that is also a lesson in the sense that the chicanery and some of the skullduggery that occurred, we devised a mechanism to weed it out, weed them out. And as it is now, we have a functioning democracy that has held up since we have had our independence. It is also the case, though, that a democracy is a messy thing. Democracies are by their very nature noisy. And so when we hear the cacophony of democracy in Jamaica, what it really means is that it is working. So our functioning democracy is one of our successes, and we can put that in the plus column. Freedom of expression. Jamaica has a Bill of Rights, within which freedom of expression is embedded as one of the rights. You know, this 2011 Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, one of the things, and it says, with respect to freedom of expression, the right to seek, receive, distribute, and disseminate information through any media. The Freedom of the World Report of 2018 indicated that Jamaica is ranked among the ranked among the top free nations of the world with an aggregate score of 77 out of a possible 100 on several indicators: political rights, civil liberties, including press freedom. And so that's also one of the successes that we can count. You know, it is the case that when it comes to the failed state argument, people often compare Jamaica with Singapore. But the thing is, the kinds of freedom of expression and freedom of thought that we have in Jamaica is unheard of in Singapore. It is also the case that Jamaica ranks highly as it relates to press freedom, which is also related to the freedom of expression. And we don't have, because it is the case that a free press is one of the guardrails of a democracy. And many of the issues for which our politicians have had to answer and have oftentimes find themselves on the back foot and against the ropes, those are matters that have been brought to the fore by our journalists and our press, our media people. And we do not have a history of the killing of journalists in Jamaica, as is the case, for example, with Khashoggi, who was killed in the Turkish embassy, and it is believed that operatives from the Saudi Arabian government was involved. We don't have that history. We have a history of press freedom, and we have had the Gleaner newspaper that has been around from 1834. It was formed just a few months after emancipation, as a matter of fact, and here it is still standing, notwithstanding having been merged. So that is another one of our successes. It is also the case that whereas there have been challenges with the performance and output of our education system, but access to education is another one of our successes that we can cite in post-independence Jamaica. I know Bobby Winter and myself have had some discussions and divergent views on this, but I just want to say to him that I'm focusing on the access issue here. And here I quote Martin Henry, where he says that access to education has vastly increased over 50 years of independence. This was 10 years ago, with virtually every child in Jamaica having access to secondary education and some 30% having access to some form of post-secondary education, heavily subsidized or fully paid for by the state. So Jamaica has also established some important institutions that have made positive impacts, or some of them that were formed pre-independence, but have continued post-independence and have grown from strength to strength. So for example, institutions that were colleges, so take CAS, now UTEC, for example, where I work, formed in 1958. And has been upgraded to university status from 1995, so forth. Mico University College, one of the oldest teacher training institutions in the Western Hemisphere, formed pre-independence, but has grown tremendously post-independence. It's now a university college. The Jamaica School of Agriculture was established in 1910, and it has now been developed and evolved into the College of Agriculture, Science and Education, and so forth. And we have a network of community colleges island-wide. So in terms of access to education, we can also count that as a success. And then there is the R-Trust NTA. And in terms of a quality assurance agency, the University Council of Jamaica, the national accreditation body, established in 1987, has established itself with a track record of performance and credibility, and is a high-performing organization. So access to education is another one of our successes. And then I will mention primary health care. Primary health care, Jamaica has done well concerning primary health care. And it's nothing short of spectacular what Jamaica has accomplished in terms of primary health care with respect to reducing or eliminating infectious diseases. Back in the day, there used to be things like yaws, mumps, and those kind of things. Jamaica has reduced or eliminated mumps, measles. There's no cases of poliomyelitis. When I was going to primary school back in the early, the late 60s to early 70s in primary school, you would see one or two of my classmates who were afflicted by polio. We don't see that anymore. I'm not sure if there's been a reported case of poliomyelitis in Jamaica for the last 40, 50 years or so. And so we have eradicated those childhood diseases essentially. And also our level of immunization ranks at first world level. First world level, our level of immunization. One of my colleagues at UTEC, the now Dean of the College of Health Sciences and formerly head of the Caribbean School of Nursing, Dr. Adela Campbell, she published in 2018 a book by the University of Technology Jamaica Press called the Jamaica Public Health System from the 17th to the 21st Century, a policy and structural perspective. And in her book, Dr. Campbell noted that Jamaica enjoys good health status generally, as a good primary health care track record, and compares well internationally. Immunization coverage in 2010 was at 95%, whereas the global average coverage was 85%. There are other indicators of health status that one can allude to as it relates to success in the health domain, notwithstanding challenges. So for example, life expectancy. Life expectancy at birth in Jamaica ranks right there with first world levels. It is 74.13%, 74.13% years. Contraceptive prevalence is also right up there at 69%. Infant mortality is down as well. And in terms of the number of live births, maternal mortality, all of those things, the metrics are very much in line with international standards. And so another metric as it relates to health that I will also cite is the fertility rate of Jamaican women. There was a time in Jamaica when women would have in double digits of children, the 14, the 15, the 16, the 10, the 9, the 8, those kind of numbers were the norm. On this particular indicator, Jamaica has done well because the fertility rate per woman is now 2.09. And this statistics, according to the National Family Planning Board, has been decreasing since 2005. Some of us will recall the campaign of the 1970s, 2 is better than too many. And that campaign was a stunning success in terms of the decline in fertility rates. And that's one of the successes that we have had. I will also end with this catalog of successes by mentioning that Jamaica is a cultural superpower. And that is the title and subject of the book that Mr. Nunes mentioned that I recently published, Jamaica, Little But Talawa, our cultural successes, and other superpowers that we have had as a nation. Our music, our food, our athletes, as we would say in Jamaican parlance, we jaminate. We just saw the Tokyo Olympics, we saw the World Championships, we've seen the Commonwealth Games, we have just seen our Sunshine Girls out there perform, the Reggae Girls have qualified for the World Cup, and those kinds of things. And any corner of the world you go, you can hear the pulsating beat of reggae music. And so our punching weight, we have punched well above our weight as a country with just under 2 million population. So we are a cultural superpower, and that has been one of our successes as well. Jamaica is a tourism magnet. Over 4 million visitors come to Jamaica annually just to soak up what we have to offer in terms of our culture, our magnetic culture, and our Ivey vibes. I was on the North Coast last week at one of the hotels, and it was bursting at its seams in terms of people being here. So that magnetism of Jamaica as it relates to persons wanting to be like us. I recall someone saying recently that, you know, Jamaica should be paid to exist, just in terms of the kinds of gifts we have given to the world in terms of our culture and our disposition and the vibes that we emanate, that we give off to others. So those are some of our successes. So let's turn our attention to the other side of the ledger. Where have we gone wrong? What are some of the areas that we have faltered? You know, I've come to hear some of these things come from the historical record because one was not there to hear them firsthand. Is that Jamaica was regarded as the pearl of the Caribbean. And we were seen as the poster child as to newly emergent independent countries with tremendous prospects. But we have lost our way in many respects, notwithstanding the successes that I've just enumerated. And one of the areas that we have had tremendous challenges, difficulties, and in many respects, it has kind of overshadowed most of the achievements it has cast a shadow on the achievements that I've just listed. Political violence, political tribalism, garrisonization of communities, the conscription, according to Arnold Bertram, the conscription of Jamaica's poor into warring political factions, hostile tribes, perpetually at war, is how one of our former prime ministers described how things have been fashioned. So this is one of the perverse achievements of Jamaica as an independent country. As it is now, and I've cited political violence and tribalism and the garrison communities as the incubators of this purling tsunami of crime that we now see that we're having. They were spawned, or the dispositions and the social dysfunctionalities that are conducive to crime and violence were spawned, I'm arguing, in these politically tribalized garrison constituencies, to the extent that Jamaica ranks in the top 10, top 5 perhaps, of the most murderous countries in the world. We have killed over 1,000 Jamaicans annually for the last several decades. Somebody has done a computation, and it is the case. In 1962, when Jamaica gained independence, there were 62 murders that year. Last year, we had over 1,400, and we have had over 1,000 for many decades since. And that kind of thing is really disheartening. It is depressing. Just if you look at the newspaper headlines, just so we had Grand Gala on Saturday. And then this morning, we woke up to hear over 30 people homeless in central Kingston because their houses were razed with fire and all of those type of things. And we can go on and on and on of the various instances of homicides, violence. We've had that horrible case in Clarendon recently where that young man slaughtered a mother and her 4 children. And we can go on and on and on and on. And these are some of the examples that I've cataloged in the 3 volumes of my book. So our crime situation is one of the terrible blotches that we have had on our mark book as a country since independence. And then there's the economy. Economic growth, and I read out that one of the goals of Vision 30 is a prosperous economy. Jamaica has had anemic growth for decades, just a little over 1% economic growth that has been registered. And it is the case that in early independence, when Hugh Shearer was Prime Minister, having succeeded Alexander Bustamante, and the discovery of our bauxite deposits and all of that and so on, Jamaica's economic growth was averaging over 6% in the order of 8% and so on and so forth. But one of the challenges there was that the level of inequality seemed to have grown correspondingly with the economic growth at that time. And so that led to actually the ushering of Michael Manley into power in 1972, one could argue. But since then, our economic growth has been tremendously anemic. Sometimes when I hear the PIOJ or Statin report economic growth of less than 1%, I say to myself, boy, they have a very accurate measuring device or methodology that can pick up growth of less than 1%. And we have had that. And then there's the matter of the devaluation of our dollar. I heard Minister Nigel Clark saying recently that the level of devaluation since it has been running away amounts to something in the order of a 50,000% depreciation of our dollar. Martin Henry has made the point that that has been one of the greatest mechanisms for the pauperization of the Jamaican people in terms of the devaluation of our dollar. And one of our prominent politicians had made the point that, you know, we have witnessed the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. So on the economic side, we have not had the level of success that our potential gave us the prospect of achieving. And on account of that, we have now a situation where over 60% of the employed workforce earns the minimum wage. Can you imagine? And on the other hand, we also have nearly 1 million Jamaicans living in informal settlements, and we derisively refer to them as squatters. And no account is often taken of the historical context where people were historically landless. Whereas at emancipation, the 2nd of August, 1834, persons were thrown off the estates on which the plantations on which they worked for free for hundreds of years into landlessness. And our leadership over the years, successive administrations, have not orchestrated a situation whereby the majority of Jamaicans can be prosperous, self-sustaining, and be able to properly take care of their families and their own welfare. So the economy has not performed as it should and has the potential to perform. We are a tourism magnet. We are blessed with 365 days of sunshine for the most part in terms of our salubrious climate. We have some good agricultural lands, and we have seen where some of our class 1 agricultural lands, houses are being planted on them. And so those kind of things. And then there's the matter of corruption. Corruption. We have, all of you here present, have over the years, I have often made reference to it. The recurring themes, like a recurring decimal, if you will, of the reports of auditors general about malfeasance and the misappropriation of funds. Over the years, successive administrations, as we say, none are better than none, in terms of what we have seen as to how the public purse has been plundered over the years. I was thinking this morning about the case of Ted Ogilvy. Some of you may remember Ted Ogilvy, public servant. I think it was the McGregor Gully project. Man was going home for lunch in, where was it? One of those communities in the eastern, not the eastern, towards the western end there, in the vicinity of the boulevard. Going home for lunch and was shot and killed because of the probity that he was exercising concerning the particular project. And we have had reams and reams and cases and cases and cases of corruption that have occurred in Jamaica. And because they, you know, I've said recently that our politicians are geniuses, you know, because what they have done is that they have pitted Jamaicans against each other, putting Jamaicans into 2 tribes. And so that when the one side does something, or the other side does is point at the other side and say, you did do it too. And so we engage in this whataboutery, what about you, and so forth. The late Anthony Abrams made the point that all a Jamaican politician has to do when caught in some kind of impropriety is to point at another one and say, them they do it too. And we have that type of situation. So in relation to the issue of corruption, we have gone off the rails also in post-independence Jamaica. And it is something that we need to cauterize as we go forward. And then the other failure I want to mention and wrap up is the matter of inequality. The Jamaican society, which a lot of persons do not seem to understand, because it seems like, you know, it's kind of invisible, or persons are in their own little cocoons and they don't immediately experience it because, you know, they may not live in a particular neighborhood, they may not have a particular address, so they don't experience it. But the level of inequality in the Jamaican society is stunning. How do we measure inequality? The economists measure inequality by a ratio they call the Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient goes from between 0 to 100 or between 0 to 1, same ratio. 1, 0 is perfect equality. And the closer you get to 1 is the more unequal the society is. Jamaica's inequality index as measured by the Gini coefficient is between 4 and 5, or 40% to 50%. In terms of the level of inequality, we have fashioned a society in which the distance between people who are successful, in the sense that what we have is some people who are living in the lap of luxury, and then at the other end of the spectrum, some people who are living in the worst possible situation imaginable. I remember just after the Tivoli incursion by the security forces in 2010, a set of private sector leaders ventured into the inner city. And they said, they commented thereafter, that they had no idea that they were fellow Jamaicans living under such abominable circumstances. So these are some of the things that we have in front of us as a country. And that is why persons say the title of my book is interesting. Paradise and Paradox. Yes, paradise and paradox coexist side by side in Jamaica. And I'm arguing that as citizens, we need to make our voices heard. We can't sit down because our personal circumstances might be okay and leave our fellow Jamaicans out there without any consideration for their welfare. I've often wondered, and from time to time, I read various columns, and there's this particular columnist who has his ear very close to the ground. And when I read his columns, for example, and he would say that he has interviewed a domestic helper to find out how she manages and how that minimum wage stretches. And in one instance, he cites an example where the woman he was interacting with said to him, let me tell you something. You see, some people are people like you. In their houses, they have different kinds of soap. They have soap to bathe with. They have soap to wash their hands. They have soap to wash their clothes, and so on and so forth. You see, in my house is one kind of soap we have, and that soap does everything, and so on and so forth. How do you make minimum wage stretch? Well, by what the thing named tang, by tang, mix a good batch of it for the kids, get some cheese trick and some other things and so forth. And the level of ingenuity that some persons have to undergo just for basic survival is just remarkable. That you could take, for example, the West, our tourist capital. It is the case that there are 22 informal settlements. I use that term. 22 informal settlements encircling the 5 stars and the 10-star and the 100-star hotels in the Western city, and so on and so forth. A stone throw away from luxury. We have people living in penury. Those are the kinds of bipolarity that we have in the Jamaican society. So now I come back to summarizing. Is Jamaica a failed state taken on balance? It has been said that Lee Kuan Yew came to Jamaica in 1966 and he observed what was happening. It was said that he came here to copy what we were doing. That's the argument. And in his book, From First World to Third World, he has a section on Jamaica. But in any event, it has been argued by others that Lee Kuan Yew came to Jamaica and he learned what not to do to develop a country. Now, when we look at the textbook definition of a failed state and other evidence, so the textbook definition of a failed state is that there's no central government. There are no services provided by any central authority. And I thought to myself this morning, there are some top performing entities, institutions in Jamaica. When you go for, and I'm going to stick with the public sector, the much aligned NHT, it has some very good systems and facilities and people and so on and so forth. As an organization, notwithstanding not providing as many houses as it should, the IT systems, the organizational frameworks and so on in the NHT is a well-run institution as a public entity. Let me cite just one more example and leave off of them. The PICA, Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency. You can go to Pika now and get a passport in 1 day. And also the RGD. Those are fairly well-run public sector entities. And the point I'm making is this: in a failed state, you don't have any such kinds of organizations at all. So based on the evidence and the textbook definition of a failed state, Jamaica is not a failed state. However, Jamaica is failing in many important areas. Failing in many important areas. Jamaica has not lived up to its potential. That's what I'm arguing. In many areas, not lived up to its potential at all, at all, at all. Jamaica is like a child that aces the common entrance, gets very good grades. I'm dating myself by talking about the common entrance. Well, so be it. It is what it is. Ace the common entrance, goes to high school, does well in first form, and then falters and doesn't come out with the subject passes that would have been, expected based on their early promise that was shown. That's kind of like Jamaica. And so I'm saying that whereas we have not failed, and based on the evidence, when we weigh Jamaica in the balance after 60 years of independence, that is the challenge that we have. And so it begs the question, what kind of Jamaica I would like to see? What are the features of the Jamaica that I would like to see going forward in the next, we might argue that, well, the next 60 years. But, I've decided in giving some thought to it, that I'm not going to think about the next 60 years. I'm going to think about the next 8 years. And the reason for thinking about the next 8 years is that Vision 2030 said that by 2030, we would be a developed country 8 years from now. So that's the time horizon that I'm focusing on. And I'm arguing that the Jamaica that I would like to see between now and then is a Jamaica that displays economic viability and social harmony and is safe, clean, orderly, and few people are hungry, illiterate, or unemployed. A Jamaica where murder is not commonplace. A Jamaica that displays positive collective nationalism in a corrupt-free state where meritocracy and industry are valued over cronyism, insidery, and nepotism. A Jamaica in which looting of the public purse and other resources is absent. In other words, the rebooted Jamaica I would love to see is a Jamaica that is clearly on a trajectory to achieve the goals of Vision 2030, of being truly the place of choice to live, to work, to raise families, and do business. Not a Jamaica that is convulsing with crime and violence, and a place from which our most educated youngsters flee in droves to seek opportunities in foreign land. There was a poll done by one of our prominent pollsters some years ago, where Jamaicans were asked where it is that they would go in the world. And they said they would go to any other country other than Afghanistan to seek opportunities. So my aspiration of the Jamaica that I would like to see, that I've just articulated, it begs another question. Who will be the founding father or mother, the chief architect, if you will, of this new Jamaica? I'm arguing that we need a rebooted Jamaica, a resetted Jamaica, if you will. The tagline for our independence celebration was reigniting a nation for greatness. I'm suggesting that it could be resetting the nation for greatness. We are at an inflection point. We're at an inflection point now that we are reflecting on 60 years on after independence. Things simply can't continue like this. To be clear then, I will repeat, Jamaica is not a failed state as per the textbook definition, but it has fallen short in many important respects over the 60 years of independence. and our rotating cast of political leaders, they have not orchestrated a country that is a safe and happy home for all. And I'm arguing that as we celebrate the 60 years and as we reflect on it as an independent country, we must also introspect on our missteps and make the necessary corrections, because we have the potential to be the greatest little country on earth. And my final point is this: Jamaica does not need a solitary savior, a messiah. What Jamaica needs is our collective efforts. I've argued that Jamaica in its current state is the Jamaica that Jamaicans want to see, because if it wasn't, we would change it. Thank you for your attention and the opportunity to make this presentation. If you have questions, I'll be happy to attempt to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. President Paul, would you like to do the extension first?
Yes, DP store, yes. May I ask for a motion to extend this meeting by 10 minutes? Those in favor?
So moved, President.
Seconded?
Seconded.
Yes, thank you very much.
Well, Dr. Ivey, I want to say thank you very much for, you will be thanked formally, but I just want to open the floor, and if anyone would like to ask a question, we can have a short Q&A spot, since we are running a little behind.
Sure.
Yes. Is someone who wants to go ahead? Go ahead.
This has been one of the most balanced presentation I've heard for a long time. You have noted the failures. You have noted, well, you started with the successes, and you noted the failures. And when I listen to the failures, the question in my mind is, what is keeping the lid on? Because the failures that you're enunciating and the inequality, I've seen this erupt in many countries, but somehow in Jamaica, we have the resilience to keep the lid on the thing. And maybe that's a presentation you can give us at another occasion. You're muted.
You having put the matter, I have immediately gotten some thoughts just on the spur of the moment, that perhaps it is also aspects within our culture. I recall driving from St. Catherine to Portland one Friday night, and I decided that I would count all the parties and little sessions that were on the way, and I gave up after a while. I lost count, because at every little district as you pass, every little roadside, there was a party going on. And I think that's is one of the examples of the things that keep the lid on it. Despite the challenges, Jamaicans have found ways to entertain themselves, and the tremendous creativity of our people and the resilience, which I imagine, some of it might be inherited and so forth. But yes, those are things that I can say at the very onset, that within our culture, we have found the ways and means of surviving, notwithstanding, and we are able to mine happiness out of difficult circumstances. Miss Lou made the point of, kin teeth, keep a heartburn and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else who would like to ask? Go ahead.
Dr. Paul, this is Kevin Williams. Yes. I remember Gilbert in 1988 and how our country was extremely resilient. We had people sharing food, sharing ice, sharing all sort of something. Anybody remember it?
I do.
Always remember after Gilbert, we had no power. Most of us didn't have any power, so we had to find time to spend time with each other. And there was a level of unselfishness, and that I think is one of the backbones of our development in this country, when we were unselfish. After Gilbert, we went back to our old selfish ways, and we see it in our driving on the road. We see it in our music. We turn up the music loud, loud, loud for the whole night, and people want to study or go to sleep to perform the next day, and so forth. Those little things erode our development, and we don't realize it sometimes. You remember, I need to do a little bit more work on that. I want to do and you know, I heard what you said, but I want to do some more studies to see how this loud noises, loud night noises, and how the driving on the road, the disrespect we have for each other, how that has helped to erode our nation development.
You could make contact with me so that my university can formalize a kind of structured
remember that I'm a part of your university, so I'm from the Faculty of Science and Sport. Okay, so yes. We'll talk some more.
Yes, please.
Okay. But I don't know if you want to add a little bit on that, you know, in terms of comment on it a little bit more, just to say that if we don't have the discipline that we used to have in the olden days, where we were a child, for example, was a child of the community, right? If something went wrong with a child of the community could discipline the child. You don't try that right now, you know, you're in trouble. It's all about me and my family, myself and I. We have lost the community spirit. You know?
As we go forward, we need to reset the social architecture. The social architecture of Jamaica needs a reset. I saw a tweet from Faye Ellington this morning that we should start with the roads. And it is something that I have argued. That book that I've written about engendering a culture of lawfulness to fix Jamaica's normalized abnormalities, it speaks to the different levels of lawlessness that we have allowed to grow on top of us and the need for us to reset by starting with the roads. Dr. Herbert Gale has talked about our dysfunctional families as being ground zero for some of the challenges that we have had and so forth. Our nation, that's why I said, you know, we need a reset. It's not a reigniting that we want. We need a reset of some of the fundamentals that had kept us as a society intact. And you spoke about the survival and the ability to survive, the extended family. I've often made the point that I'm happy that I was able to know and interact with my grandparents, where you have that extended family structure in which you grew up and you got to understand certain things and certain expectations and so forth. As it is right now, I can't do anything that will embarrass my deceased parents. and they're deceased, but I can't do anything that will denigrate the family name and so forth. And so we have Jamaicans, for example, in terms of how we bond together. Look at the level of remittances that come in here. People will go abroad to work and they will maintain families back home in terms of ensuring the light bill is paid, the school fees, the supplies for school, and so on and so on and so forth. We have those, you see, our Governor General has made the point that everything wrong with Jamaica can be fixed with all that's right about Jamaica. It's just that there's a need for leadership. Countries need to be led, you know. Certain things that are required in a country. It takes the scale and the muscle of government to do these things, because government has the capacity to affect a country at country level scale then. Martin Henry makes the point that governments have two important levers: policy and laws at its disposal. There is a law for motorcyclists to wear helmets. When last you see the odd motorcyclists wear helmets in Jamaica, and they go right by the police like this, right by the police and all of these type of things. We need, in the next 8 years, in the next 60 years, to reset our country for greatness.
Amen. I agree. Thank you.
May I ask a question, please? Yes. Dr. Paul, thank you for quite an insightful presentation.
Thank you.
Insightful to me. But I would like to know what role do you see the people who are more privileged in Jamaica? What role do you see them helping playing in resetting, you know, the barometer, in helping to address the failures and build upon the successes?
You know, it is the case that sometimes credit isn't given where credit is due. I heard the point made recently in the public space that Jamaicans for Justice was started by middle-class Jamaicans who saw a particular case of injustice that jolted them into action, and that it was also from the agitations of Jamaicans for Justice that Indicom was established, and so on and so forth. So we have that particular example. It is also the case that the Advocates Network, they are largely middle-class Jamaicans agitating for better in the country. The Jamaica Meter Accountability Portal, JAMP, Jamaica Meter Accountability Portal, and so forth. This is an entity that is largely being spearheaded by middle-class Jamaicans and so forth. And we can cite many other examples of these things. And sometimes we don't do an accounting of the successes that these entities have had and the roles that they have played in making things different. You know, we had the Jamaica Council for Human Rights with Flo O'Connor that predated Jamaicans for Justice and so on and so forth. And, you know, the CVSS, the Council for Volunteerism, Council for Social Services and Volunteerism and Social Services, CVSS and so forth. And even from back in the days of, you know, I'm going into prehistory in relation to my own self, Jamaica Welfare and those kind of entities and so forth. There has been much contributions by middle class. What we need is more. What we need is more. And we also need for young persons to be initiated into being active citizens, citizens who will participate in the governance of their countries, in our country. That's where I think we need to go. And one of the things that I've said to myself, for example, that my next mission is going to be one of citizenship education for participation in the democracy, because a democracy is predicated on citizen participation and citizen involvement. And the level of apathy that's in the society now, whereas the turnout in the last election, September 3, 2020, was 37%. That level of apathy is an indication of democratic decay. Those are some of the things that we want we should do. And it is for the middle class and for academicians, such as myself and other intellectuals, to lead the way and to empower people from the grassroots level upwards so that they can reclaim their voices and their role in the society. Martin Henry speaks about the office of citizen and what a citizen's responsibilities and obligations are in a democracy.
Okay. Thank you so much for that response.
Yes.
Dr. Ivey, don't forget the service clubs. The service clubs, like the Kiwanis Club.
Indeed.
They do a whole lot of work.
Well, I concur.
Okay.
I ask a couple questions.
Just we can only allow for one more.
Okay, so, one more. Okay, I'll ask one question. Dr. Ivey, this is Kofi Dunquan calling from North Carolina, your fellow dentalite. But it looks like inflation.
Oh, yes.
It looks like the devaluation of the dollar is a big thing that's making the average person poor and poorer. Have there been any serious consideration in going to a gold standard or tying the dollar to a gold standard or some variety or combination in order to help stabilize the dollar?
No, that has not been articulated as a policy position that has been put forward by the authorities. What we have been told is that the model that is being pursued is basically a liberalization, and that market forces will determine the right price of the dollar, because, you know, the exchange rate is essentially a price. So market forces will determine that. And the focus of the central bank being recently made independent is to control inflation. and to fight inflation, because they have made a determination that inflation is the greater of the two evils, devaluation versus inflation. And in the US, where you reside, you will see the battle with inflation that is happening there and the effect that it has had on gas prices, though there are other factors like the war in Ukraine and so on that's at play there as well and so forth. But nevertheless, coming off the pandemic there and the food prices, there's this runaway inflation. But the policy position that has been articulated by Jamaican authorities is that the exchange rate will find its value based on market forces, and the central bank will fight inflation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ivey. President Paul?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you very much, DP Stewart and Dr. Ivey, for your wonderful presentation. I'm going to call on President-elect Designate Newton to do the vote of thanks. PED Newton.
Thank you, President Paul. Good evening again, everybody. Dr. Paul Ivey, on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston and everyone on this platform tonight, I have to say much thanks for an inspiring, clear, insightful talk, because this wasn't a speech, this was a talk. I mean, I followed you all the way through. There was no point at which I was not right there with you in what you wanted to come in. A real nice part about it is that this talk, as PDT Ralston said, it was one of the most balanced presentations he has heard in a long time, also for me. And one of the great things about this, sir, is that this is coming from, as you said when you started out, a real point in your life had any intention of being anywhere except Jamaica. And I guess maybe you're one of those who inspired Tinga Stewart to write "Nowhere No Better Than Yada," because you're one of those who could have gone wherever you wanted to go, but you chose to be right here. It also dawned on me that you're one of those real educators, because I've always heard it said that real educators not only try to let you understand by speaking, but they also put it in writing for future generations. And you have been, I can see you have been a prolific writer. And I, for one, will be picking up a couple of your books. I saw it in the chat. Some persons were saying, hey, your books are real easy to understand. And I like the way you approach it. And I think most people did, because what you said was that, hey, let the facts take you to your answer. So you were not there to convince us of anything. What you came here to do was to give us the facts and for us to follow the facts and see what conclusion it led to. And you also helped us by saying, hey, ask yourself two questions. How well have we managed our affairs, and is Jamaica a happy, safe place? And you followed the outline that you did. First of all, you showed us some of the successes, right? Elections largely accepted, freedom of expression, freedom of press, challenges to the education system, but widespread access, primary health education. But you didn't hide the negatives either. You said we have had an anemic growth, we have had a growth in inequality, and corruption has held us back. In the end, because of how you laid it out and how you presented it, we were all able to come to the same conclusion. Well, I shouldn't say we, I should say I was able to come to the same conclusion that you came to. That in the last 60 years, we have had many challenges, but we have had many successes also. And if we follow how you have laid it out, where we have to let this thing be fact-based, then we can see how we can identify the problems and fix them so future generations don't go through the same problems that we have gone through. So once again, sir, I really want to thank you on behalf of everyone who is on this platform tonight. And as a token of our appreciation, I want you to just look at the screen. You will see a certificate of appreciation from the Kiwanis Club of Kingston in recognition of this great talk. I refuse to call it a speech because sometimes speeches get boring. There was nothing boring about this. This great talk that you had with us this evening. And as someone said, I look forward to the next time that you're giving one of these talks at the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. So on behalf of all of us, sir, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you, President-elect. I appreciate the certificate that has been displayed. I look forward to getting the hard copy to display on my wall. I felt a warm presence here this evening, in terms of your attentiveness, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present here at this club. I know these service clubs do tremendous work and play a critical role in our society, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, and thank you so much for inviting me. I owe this to Bobby, who I spar with on social media, and Stuart Spence has joined the fray as well. And so we are here. And as I said at the onset, my only motivation to do these kinds of things is to see a better Jamaica. And as an educator, as you have rightfully mentioned, I see myself as documenting things for posterity, so that future generations can avail themselves of the written word and to appreciate what Jamaica's realities were and how they can now join the quest for a better country for us all. A safe and happy, prosperous Jamaica is my goal and my quest, and I'm on a mission to contribute to the extent that I can towards that goal.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much. President Paul, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, PED Newton, and to Dr. Ivey again. We'll move on to the Sergeant at Arms, and I'm going to call on Kiwani Zuri at this time.
Thank you, President Paul, and good evening to everyone. I'm going to be very brief this evening. We're just going to do some quick education on bananas. So I'm just going to, I think that we should use this time to kind of educate ourselves and not only do jokes and things of that nature. So I'm going to be giving you some facts on bananas this evening. So I'm going to be asking you some questions. What happens when bananas break up? They split. Why are bananas never lonely? Because they come in bunches. And the final fact I'm going to leave with you is, where do bananas go to learn? And the answer, Sunday school. So I ask that you bear those tips in mind as we continue to learn together. So quickly, LGED Desmond, for your premature, I'll call it, exuberance, your burst of glee, announcing information before it was time to, $500. PDT Ralston, for the brilliant idea that the role of Sarge should be rotated, one that I'm sure the club will look into. But I question your timing, and this is really a comment on how I'm doing in the role. And so because of that, I'm going to charge you $500 as well. Have yourselves a good evening, everyone.
You too, Sarge.
Also, we just playing an educator role, like Dr. Ivey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Sarge. We'll move on to the notices and announcement, followed by a thought for the week. DLG Willie, over to you.
Thank you, President Paul. Regarding notices and announcements, this coming Sunday, we're having a divisional caucus meeting at 4 p.m. to discuss the increase in divisional dues. Delegates are all presidents, president-elects, and secretaries. A reminder of the Eastern Caribbean District Convention, Fredericton, New Brunswick, that's next week, August 18th to the 20th. And in regards to invitation, we have one from the Kiwanis Club of North St. Andrew, inviting us to the Barbie Fry on August 26th. Cost of tickets is $2,000. Regarding interclubbing opportunities tomorrow, we have been specially invited to Kiwanis Club of South St. Andrew Culture Night. It begins at 6:30. I will send out the link tomorrow morning. And on Thursday, we have an invitation from North St. Andrew to attend their meeting at 6:30. On a more Sorrowful note. Let us remember distinguished President Charles Sims in our prayers, who recently suffered a stroke and is now recuperating at home. Over to you now, President Paul, in case anybody else needs to make a note.
Yes, thank you very much, dear Willie. Oh, thank you very much for sharing your link, Dr. Ivey, in the chat. I just seen it on Amazon.com. We'll have the thought for the week, and I'm going to call on DP Stewart to give us a start.
Thank you, President Paul.
Or to share his thought, rather.
Thank you, President Paul. I have two short ones as usual. The first one, it takes considerable knowledge just to realize the extent of your own ignorance. And my second one is, your mind is a garden. Your thoughts are the seeds. You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds. Those are my two thoughts, President Paul.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, DP Stewart. I see LG Rosie as her hand up. LG Rosie.
Thank you very much, President Paul. I just want to take this opportunity that I'm here, and I also know that President is in the audience as well. And I wanted to make sure that everybody saw the announcement that was made recently. And it really gives me great pleasure, great pleasure to announce that Division 23 Central has now named its interclub and its fellowship competitions. And more than the pleasure it gives me to announce that is who we have named these competitions for on behalf of who we have honored with the naming. And I want to share with Kingston Club that the interclub competition is now called the William Reason Interclub Competition. And this is done in honor of Dale G. Willie, who just, as he spoke, I said, you know, I must take this opportunity to make this formal announcement right at Kingston Club that we have done that. And I'm so pleased to be able to make that announcement. We all know that Interclub, along with SLP, is a favorite with Dale G. Willie, and it's always good to have him at all of our meetings and activities. Also allow me to announce that the fellowship competition is called the Noel Watson Fellowship Competition, and this honors PD Noel Paddy Watson, who is formerly of the Kiwanis Club of North St. Andrew, and I know President Dwayne, I saw him in the audience not too long ago. So two great Kiwanians who have indeed made Interclub what it is for us today. They have always gone out, embraced it, and have made sure that they take us along the journey. So Kiwanians, please join me in congratulating Kingston Club, North St. Andrew, and Dale G. Willie, and in memory of PD Paddy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, LG Rosie.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, it was a great meeting this evening, and I want to thank everyone that came out and to support us as usual in our weekly meeting, and to Dr. Ivey as well for sharing such a lovely presentation. At this time, may I raise a toast to Kiwanis International and to Jamaica Land We Love. This meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated. Thank you.
Good meeting, good meeting.
Yes, excellent meeting. I knew it would have been good, but it certainly exceeded my expectation. I'm so happy I came.
I agree, Rosie, I agree.